My name is Lee, and for 52 years I've called Dallas my home, though I've seen most of the world from 35,000 feet up. There's a special kind of peace that comes with being a pilot, a quiet understanding you gain as the earth shrinks beneath you and the sky opens wide. Every morning I woke up before dawn, the smell of coffee brewing a familiar comfort as I prepared for another flight. I loved my job, the hum of the engines, the responsibility of safely delivering hundreds of lives to their destinations. It was more than just a job. It was my purpose, my passion, the one constant in a life that sometimes felt like a turbulent flight. But even with the steady rhythm of takeoffs and landings, the ground held its own challenges, ones that no amount of altitude could make disappear. Life on the ground, away from the cockpit, had become a heavy weight, especially over the last few years. My daughter, Sarah, a single mother, had faced unimaginable struggles when her youngest, little Lily, was diagnosed with a rare illness that required constant, expensive care. Sarah worked 2 jobs, but it was never enough. So every spare penny I earned, every extra flight hour I could pull went straight to them. My pilot's salary, once comfortable, felt like a meager allowance stretched thin across endless medical bills, specialized diets, and a mountain of other needs. I drove an old car that clanked and wheezed, my apartment was modest, and luxuries were a distant memory. The biggest struggle wasn't the money itself, though that was always present. It was the gnawing fear that I wasn't doing enough, that I couldn't protect my family from the harsh realities of the world. This doubt, this deep-seated fear of failure, was my internal nemesis, whispering to me in the quiet moments between flights, telling me I wasn't strong enough, wasn't good enough, wasn't quick enough to catch them before they fell. I tried everything to improve our situation. I picked up every overtime shift offered, flying red-eye flights that blurred into endless days, often landing in one city just to turn around and fly back. I started packing my own meals for flights to save a few dollars. I even looked into selling some old family keepsakes, though each item felt like a piece of my own history I was sacrificing. My hands, usually steady on the yoke, sometimes trembled with exhaustion. But every time I thought I was making headway, another setback would hit. My old car finally gave out, needing a costly repair that wiped out a month's worth of savings. Then Lily needed a new medication that wasn't covered by insurance, adding another $200 a week to the ever-growing pile. Each hurdle was a punch to the gut, making the goal of financial stability feel like a distant star I could see but never reach. I was pushing myself to the absolute limit, pouring every ounce of my energy into my work, seeing it as the only way I knew how to fight for my family. The lowest point came on a Tuesday, a day that started like any other. I was already drained from a week of non-stop flights. I had just managed to scrape together enough money to cover Lily's next round of treatment for a few months by taking out a small, high-interest loan against my retirement savings, a decision that weighed heavily on my conscience. I felt a fleeting sense of relief, a moment of fragile hope. But then, the airline announced a sudden, unexpected cutback in pilot hours due to a decrease in travel demand. My flight schedule was slashed by nearly a third. It felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. The loan I had just taken out would soon be impossible to pay back with a reduced income, and Lily's future treatments now felt utterly out of reach. I sat in my small apartment, the silence deafening, the airline email glowing mockingly on my phone screen. I looked at the framed photos of Sarah and Lily, their smiles innocent and trusting. How could I face them? How could I continue flying, the one thing that still brought me a semblance of joy, when it felt like everything I earned was just a drop in a bottomless bucket? For the first time in my life, I considered giving up, walking away from the cockpit, finding some simpler, less demanding job, even if it paid less, just to escape the crushing pressure. The weight of the world wasn't just on my shoulders. It was pressing down on my soul. It was the next day on a flight from Dallas to Seattle that everything changed. I was in the cockpit, going through my pre-flight checks, my mind a storm of worry. I watched the passengers board, their faces a mix of excitement and anticipation. But then I saw him, a little boy no older than 7, clutching his mother's hand, his eyes wide with fear as he stepped onto the plane. He was gripping a worn teddy bear, his knuckles white. I could see the tremor in his tiny body. His mother tried to reassure him, but he just burrowed into her side. As the pilot, I often liked to greet the passengers, especially the young ones, before takeoff. It was a tradition I loved, a chance to share a bit of the magic of flying. Today, though, my heart felt too heavy for magic. Still, something in that little boy's terrified eyes called to me. I walked down the aisle to him, bending down so I was eye level. "Hello there, brave traveler," I said, my voice softer than usual. He flinched, then slowly looked up. "First flight?" I asked gently. His mother nodded, smiling weakly. "He's very nervous." I reached into my jacket pocket, a gesture I'd made hundreds of times, and pulled out my personal pilot wings pin, the shiny silver emblem I always wore on my uniform. It was old, a little scuffed, but still gleamed proudly. I also had a small model plane I kept for special occasions. "You know," I told the boy, "every pilot starts somewhere." Even I was nervous on my very first flight, but it's the most wonderful feeling, soaring above the clouds. I pinned the silver wings onto his little shirt pocket, right next to his teddy bear. "These are your official pilot wings, and this," I said, handing him the small model plane, "is for you to fly wherever your imagination takes you." His eyes, which had been so full of fear, slowly widened, then lit up with a spark of wonder. He clutched the plane, a tiny smile starting to form on his lips. His mother gasped, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Captain," she whispered. I just smiled, my own heart feeling a strange, unexpected lightness. Back in the cockpit, as we soared above the clouds, something shifted inside me. Giving those things away, things I truly valued, to a complete stranger brought me more joy than I had felt in months. It was a small act, but it reminded me that even when my own life felt barren, I still had something to give, something to offer, and that act of giving could create a spark. A few weeks later, I was on another flight, still grappling with my reduced hours and the relentless financial pressure. After landing, as I was exiting the gate, a woman approached me. It was the little boy's mother. "Captain Lee?" she asked, her voice warm. "I just wanted to thank you again for what you did for my son, Ethan. He hasn't stopped talking about his wings or his plane. He even sleeps with them." I smiled, remembering his face. "It was my pleasure, ma'am." She paused, then said, "You know, my husband and I run a foundation. We help families dealing with difficult medical situations. When Ethan told us about you and how kind you were, it truly touched us. We've been looking for ways to expand our reach, and I happened to overhear you mentioning Dallas. Is everything all right? You seemed a little burdened." My heart skipped a beat. She didn't press, but her eyes held a genuine concern. Hesitantly, I told her about Sarah and Lily, about the illness, the treatments, the mounting costs, and my own struggles. I didn't expect anything, just needed to talk. She listened patiently, her expression thoughtful. "Captain," she said when I finished, "I can't promise anything, but I'd like to put you in touch with our team. We might be able to help Lily get connected to some specialized programs and resources that could ease the financial burden significantly. It would be an honor, after what you did for our son." The resolution wasn't immediate, nor was it a magic fix, but it was a lifeline. Within a few months, with the help of the foundation Ethan's parents ran, Lily was enrolled in a program that covered a significant portion of her medical expenses and provided access to cutting-edge treatments. The weight on my shoulders and Sarah's slowly began to lift. My reduced flight hours still meant less income, but the crushing burden of Lily's bills was gone. I continued to fly, but with a renewed sense of purpose, my fear replaced by gratitude and a deeper appreciation for the unexpected connections life offered. I started volunteering my time, speaking at local schools about aviation, always bringing extra pilot pins and model planes to give to nervous or curious children. I even began working with the foundation that had helped Lily, sharing my story and offering support to other struggling families. My new normal wasn't just about flying. It was about connecting, about remembering that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple outwards, changing lives in ways we could never predict. Years passed. Lily thrived, her illness managed, her laughter filling our home with joy. Sarah found stability and peace, and I, Captain Lee, still flew the friendly skies. One day, on a routine flight, as passengers deplaned, a young man, tall and confident, with a bright, hopeful smile, approached me. "Captain Lee?" he asked. "You probably don't remember me, but my name is Ethan. You gave me my first pilot wings and a model plane on my first flight years ago. I was terrified then, but you made me believe in the magic of flight." He paused, reaching into his pocket. "I wanted you to know," he continued, pulling out a silver pilot wings pin, identical to the one I'd given him. "I'm in flight school now. You inspired me. I carry these with me on every training flight." And there, on his shirt pocket, right where I'd pinned those old wings so long ago, was a small, slightly faded silver pilot pin, gleaming just as brightly as it had that day. It was my old pin, the one I'd given him, now returned to the skies, proving that sometimes the greatest treasures we possess aren't the ones we hold on to, but the ones we give away, because true wealth isn't in what you have, but in the connections you make, and how those connections can lift not just one person, but an entire sky full of dreams. Things truly do get better, especially when we remember to be kind.